Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Well, good morning. Yeah, you're muted. Oh, which one?
On the panel. I adjusted
Okay.
Test. There I am.
There you are.
I'm back.
Well, that's what happens when I'm out of town.
Yeah, that's right.
And Jim sits in the seat with the control board.
Panel. Yep. Because I'm out of control. Yeah.
Jim doesn't know how to control.
That's right. I just push buttons until it sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah. So back home and it's sweater weather.
Oh yeah.
We enjoy coffee out on the patio, and we're still doing it. And this morning I have a little Google Home small speaker out on the patio, and I was like, "Hey Google, what's the temperature?" And it was 32 degrees. And so we're starting, and lots of snow happening on the mountains and all of that.
Yeah. You had to bring that up.
Well, I know Jim would prefer to be in warmer climates where there is warm. I mean, for me, if I'm going to do warm, I want to do beach. But yeah. So we're heading into the season, and doesn't look like we're going to be getting away much this year with everything that's happening with family and all of that. That we're going to just hunker down and enjoy the Utah weather. Yeah.
So,
alrighty. What do we got for announcements?
There's for our V8 Plus thing is tomorrow, so we've got that for our
it's
V8
still
people.
not too late to get involved in V8, and so even if you it's too late for this month's meetings, but if you sign up to start next month, then we can give you access. So anyone out there that wants to participate in the V8 Plus meeting, which will be with Brent Carmichael talking about pay plans, and that will be a live event with Brent.
Right.
Yeah, so it won't be recorded. So it will be a live event with Brent. And usually when we bring other people, vendors or experts in, it's recorded, but this one will be live with Brent. So the dealers that are there are going to be able to ask questions as you go along. So that's a bit of a treat.
I'm going to ask questions of Brent too.
Yes. I mean, well, he plays in so much data.
Sure.
Yeah. And, really rich conversations from his NCM dealer. Those of you who are new to the morning show, Brent Carmichael has been the biggest buy here, pay. I think he's the only buy here, pay here 20 group moderator for NCM. And NIADA made him an offer, and he's moving to NIADA to be over all of their dealer education,
right,
which includes 20 groups.
And I can say here, I'm going to be asking Brent tomorrow about the possibility of inviting the folks from NCM to come, and perhaps Jeff Martin, whenever it can make sense, to talk about that whole
transition
and what that means to our industry. Because from my perspective, it's very significant. And I haven't seen a lot of talk about it, but I think I feel like NCM made a major contribution to the buy here, pay here industry.
They did
in this whole arrangement, and so I think it's something that we want to talk about and celebrate.
So we're really excited about that. So he'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
So again, if you are listening to this and have been thinking about getting involved, tomorrow is that. Yeah, that big event. So today, anything else before we do have the dealer forum that is I've got it right here. It is the 10th through the 12th of this month. So it's coming up, or not this month, but next month. That's right. November 1st is on Friday.
Yeah.
And I have to keep, it's hard to believe that we're in November.
Yeah. The only other announcement I would make quickly is tomorrow is the 31st, which is not only Halloween, it's the end of October, which means if you're a V8 member, or you're one of those many dealers that I talk to, say, yeah, I love what you're doing with the V8. I look forward to being a member, maybe next month. And so but if it's the end of the month, grab your notes receivable report and your inventory report, Because
Yeah.
not all systems will auto-generate and capture at the close of the month.
And
so having good opening and closing
yeah.
balances are going to be important.
And then DCS actually has the white hat report that we've been working on for principal balance.
If you're listening, Michael Sansone, we want to work it out to get you on the broadcast
on the
and show that with others.
Yeah.
And I know that Mike Downey's also close. So
Yep.
we need to find some dealers
Yep.
on Automaster. In fact, if you're listening and you're an Automaster dealer and you want to be a beta dealer with that new report, reach out to us and we can work with you to
absolutely
to start producing and testing that. Okay.
Yep. It's
Very
just
good.
it's going to be it's been a little bit of a haul to get some of this taking, but we're still at it, and
Right.
there will be more
Sure.
As we go. But it's just we really appreciate the cooperation of different DMS providers
Absolutely.
out there. So
shall we dive into our subject?
Let's grow and understand your buy here, pay here clientele.
No, it's to grow. You need to understand your buy here, pay. So
I it's like punctuation.
Yeah.
Changes
matters.
everything.
Yeah,
that dramatic pause.
Right. So there are kind of three different things I want to talk about here. And this, in a White Hat Wednesday context, this is about being able to relate to customers. And kind of this came about last night. We had a pretty rich conversation.
It was your newcomer group. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are ones that don't quite have 100 accounts yet, or brand new. And it's more, that one's not so much about data, except they're looking at aggregate data from all the groups. So they're kind of getting some idea about, what's possible, but it's more coaching.
Yeah. And I think where we went last night as a kind of an aside is kind of where I kind of step into squiggly lines on occasion, especially when we're working with new dealers. I like to ask them to consider things that aren't common conversation.
So squiggly lines, those of you who are newer to the morning show, we've classified most of what is taught by straight lines and squiggly lines. And straight lines are straight line operational things. They're like the numbers, and it's the things that are
black and white.
That are black and white, and they're more and I always get this confused, kind of left brained, where they're analytical. It's that stuff. And the squiggly line is more the intentions, the emotions, those kind of, it's the heart piece. So, and that's more right brained. And so so when we talk about straight lines and squiggly lines, we're talking about the difference of, classifying those two things. And White Hat Way is built on a foundation of squiggly lines. Yeah.
It's built on kind of, I like to call it more than. Let's talk about more than day-to-day business. Right. And so, in that context, I think when I think about the marketing element of what we're talking about here, there's three different components we want to talk about in this idea of how understanding the clientele that you serve, understanding what the marketing people call an avatar, identify your ideal customer, and get really clear about who that is, and so that you can better reach them and serve, the collective customer base that is similar to this persona. So there's marketing that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about sales, and then we're going to talk about collections. So I want to break it down in that way because I'm talking about growing the business. So for us to grow the business, we first have to reach the right customers.
And how do you do that?
So we first, by breaking down what we're talking about in terms of understanding the customer first, let's make sure we understand who is the customer that we want to serve. And I would start, for me as a former buy here, pay here dealer, and somebody's been working with, especially in our V8 groups this month, we've been kind of challenging the dealers by going through a case study about affordability. Like, let's first think about income.
Now, a lot of people are going to think that's a straight line thing, but it can be a straight line thing, because it's like, these are your qualifications for underwriting, straight line, whatever. But I when we talk about affordability, we're also talking about really keeping in mind the customer. In them being human, and having a human experience, which includes a lot of different things that don't show up on their list of bills.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of understanding that I really want to spend some time here to break down what you and I have come to understand through working with dealers and through, just our overall experience of working with folks in the industry, kind of what we understand about the characteristics of the customer that we serve in the buy here, pay here space. And I often talk about, when I travel, that it's common for people to say, Jim, you don't understand. Our customers around here are just different. And I just kind of, that lands on my ears funny because it's like, I've heard that so many places and I just don't find that to be true.
Everywhere I've gone with you to talk to a dealer, that is a, that is, if they're feeling friction in changing and yeah, it's usually around, but you don't understand. You don't understand. Our customers here are this,
and
it's
listen,
like
there are things I don't understand, but to have a good understanding of the customer that we serve, the dialect is a little different in Philadelphia than it is in South Texas. Yes, that's true. What's not true is that your delinquency is higher because your customers in your area are different. As an example, right? It's like we want to say, we tell ourselves as a team or as a company that part of the reason we have problems because our customers are different. It's not us. It's the problems that our customers have, right?
But before we get into this whole a little bit of a squirrel, to understand that the problems of a customer, let's just go forward. A little bit, but
okay,
go forward.
So it's fine. The premise then here is if we're going to have success in marketing, reaching this customer, what the marketing people talk about is a persona. And look, we get it. In your buy here, pay here business, it's not like you're hiring some New York, ad agency who's going to go out there and do this market analysis and really.
I don't know. There's very few dealerships out there that actually have like a marketing department.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they're the big ones. And so usually marketing is something that you're hiring an outside person to kind of throw some things at stuff, but it's their content that you're tapping into too.
And I would say the big thing that I would throw in here is kind of my own perspective on the thing that gets left out of marketing. People think of marketing as advertising and sell. That's marketing. But what they leave out of marketing is a big part of marketing is research. It's understanding the customer. Otherwise, we run the risk of putting a lot of dollars, putting a round peg into a square hole. And so this is why in marketing, we really need to understand the customer that we're going to serve. And I think for today, we're talking about trying to do that collectively. The reason they choose an avatar or persona, like you might, if I'm working with Bob's Used Cars in Indiana, you might choose to say, okay, let's pick 2 or 3 that are representative of the customer base that we serve. Like, who are they? Right. And so you can put identity on them in terms of their vocation or whatever, but I think it's better to kind of keep it general to understand, who is the customer that we serve and buy here, pay here. Well, we really want to understand, like among things you and I talked about this morning is, I think if I were setting up a dealership in a new community, next week, I would be looking at where do the customers live? Like what part of town generally is the income?
Okay. So yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then where do they travel? Like where do they live? Where do they work? Who are the primary employers? Where do they play?
And where do they shop?
Where do they shop and spend?
And this is actually one of our things that a lot of this business is built on is putting new dealers into business. And so frequently we'll have a dealer that hasn't even chosen a location yet. And so one of the conversations we have with them, it's like, where does the buy here, pay here customer shop? Where do they live? What kind of things do they like? Where is the radius of the place that they drive to the most? Where are they at? And so there are some things that Jim is like, watch for pawn shops and laundromats and
check cashing,
check cashing and those kind of
auto
things.
parts.
Auto parts, yeah. And those kind of neighborhoods and communities is those are the customers for those type of businesses, and so you have the same type of customer.
Yeah, and in today's marketing, it's possible to serve ads, to certain
AI and
right.
technology is amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So, we can obviously, hire people to help us engage in that. But I think the first thing, even if I'm not hiring anybody to do any research, I'm not spending any money for AI. I think it's still important for us to identify who is the ideal customer that we want to reach, so that regardless if I'm just sitting back running my own Facebook ads, or even if I'm doing organic outreach, I still need to know who I'm speaking to.
And didn't you brought up a article this morning from Forbes,
right,
that really speaks to, I mean, it's like questions that you can ask yourself, ask your team, and possibly even survey your team. Because I mean, those of you who a Google form, easy way to do a survey, really easy. If you need some help in how to do one of those, feel free to reach out. But it's really easy, and you get really rich information every time we work with a dealer. And it's like there's an assumption, and we challenge that assumption, and then we'll throw out a survey, and it's like, oh,
right.
And because again, one of the things that we talk about frequently is don't assume,
right?
Because there's a lot of assumptions out there about who your customer is, and you can't be sure unless you actually measure who your customer is. And so we've done a lot of measuring, and we've done a lot of surveying, and through our clients and all of that. And so Forbes, what this list that and I think it's 7-8 things, that they're like 7 ways to know your customer better, are really, so if you've got a pad of paper and a pencil around with you, these are things you're going to want to write down and create a survey around these things, these questions, because they are really going to help you get to what it is that motivates or whatever your customer.
Sure.
Our customers.
And it's reflective of kind of their behaviors, right?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Their activities. So I've got the link ready. I've got it copied. I can throw it in the comments on the thing when we finish up here. But just remember that you want to read the bullet points. I can go.
Yeah. So this is like going into a deep dive of your current clients. Understand their habits.
Right.
So, that's like where, that can be where they entertain themselves, where, yeah, that's like what kind of things do they just typically do?
Sure.
And
don't guess.
And don't guess. And and you can, like, with your team, brainstorm what are habits that we're looking, and just write down 5 or 6 and choose the top 4 or 5 and throw them into a survey and ask, what are the things that you enjoy, or that you do. The next one is goals.
Can I stop you for 1 second on that one? I haven't done it in years. I quit trying to ask dealers to do it. I created an application of my own, and we use it in my own dealership. But I found that dealers were just not comfortable asking the question that I put on an application, which was, or dealers or their team were not comfortable asking. So where do you spend your time? Like when you're not at home and not
like
at work?
On a Friday night, what are you doing?
Yeah. What do you do with your spare time when you're not at home and not at work? Obviously, there's some selfish interest as a creditor to understand that, but it really helps me get to know the customer. Oh, well, I'm in a bowling league, so I'm bowling every Tuesday or Thursday. Or when I'm not at home or I'm not at work, this is where you would most likely find me.
But oh my gosh, when you said bowling, and I was thinking like I'm at my kid's baseball game or what.
Soccer games.
Right there is like a gold mine.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you every bowling league and every soccer team is looking for sponsors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's just right there is one is, and you're reaching your customer through supporting their habits.
Yeah.
and
their interests,
their
or
interests and their
hobbies.
hobbies.
Right.
Okay, so the next one was goals.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they trying to do they have goals?
Right.
I know, like, Candace Price, just really, really appreciate her, and I'm so grateful to see that she's just being asked frequently to actively participate in things on a higher level to help buy her, pay her. She's out of Omaha, Nebraska, and she talks to her customer about their goals, and
Mhm.
that part of her program is to help them get into a home, because I mean that's a goal and a fear. It's like, I would like to have my own home,
Mhm.
and most of them don't know, so it might be just, their goals might be financial goals. It
Right.
might be, we want to be able to go on this trip, or just, whatever it is. What are their goals? What are the things?
Yeah. So the other thing that I recently observed in our
Mhm.
own surveying with some of the dealer clients we work with was, and I was surprised by this. I've been doing this a long time, and I did not expect to see this answer.
Mhm.
That we surveyed customers that we had missed, like customers that had been in our CRM.
Yeah.
They maybe filled out an application, but they
But did
got to a
not
place where we had an
buy.
email address,
Did
right?
not buy.
Did not buy.
Mhm.
And so we went out and surveyed those customers that did not buy. And one of the questions we asked is, in your shopping for a car, how important is it to you to improve your credit
Mhm.
in this purchase? And
Mhm.
it was very high. It was like almost 70% of the respondents said, yeah, it's very high. It's a high priority. And if I take that at face value, because
Mhm.
they didn't have to choose that, there were
Uh-huh.
other options that said, that's not important right now, you know,
Mhm.
then if that's true, then that's one of the motivations or goals that we would know that maybe we do need to look at credit
Yeah.
reporting in our business, because if that is important to the customers that we're serving and trying to reach and that we're missing,
Mhm.
then that would be significant.
I would propose that, because I know from the surveys that I've participated in, when you talk about why do you suppose that people have to use buy here, pay here, it's because they weren't taught. They don't understand budgeting. They understand that credit is important, but they don't understand why or how they improve it.
Okay.
So that's my there is still a gap in education. And so, because a lot of people are going to say, well, if credit was important to them, they would make their payments on time, but they don't have that link
Mhm.
in their thinking. But they know credit is important if they
Right.
want to buy a house, or if they want to get
Mhm.
but they don't understand how to get to where what the pathway to having a better credit score is.
Okay.
And the importance of that. So there's a bit of education. So yeah,
Okay.
goals.
Good. And then the next one was identifying the customer's fears.
Okay, that is huge.
Mhm.
And I teach story branding.
Mhm.
And this is through Donald Miller. Those of you who are interested, it's you can get a book called Story Branding. He also has an academy, and there's so much to learn, and you pay so much a year. That is key to creating your message, is to understand what it is that their struggles are and what they fear.
Mhm.
because and it's not that you're trying to poke fear, but you're trying to offer solutions to things that our customers fear and struggle with.
Ideally, it would acknowledge and
Mhm.
address
Uh-huh.
their fears, right?
Mhm.
So this is where, in our
Yeah.
marketing, and this is
Mhm.
going to be true when I say marketing, this is the ads that we might
Mhm.
run, this is how our website might
Mhm.
look, and this is also the kind of conversations that we would be having on the phone,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
To better understand, like, because when we think about those customers that we miss, because
Mhm.
virtually all the dealers that we talk to, one of the big conversations,
Mhm.
big threads in our meetings in the
Mhm.
V8 this month has been around this idea of these low closing rates on leads. We're getting lots of leads, but the closing
You
rate is
keep
very low.
seeing it in
Why?
social
Why are
media.
we missing
Mhm.
all these people? It's like, the smart alecky sales manager I worked with back in Oklahoma years ago was that the customer's not there looking for a ham sandwich.
Mhm.
They're in the market to buy a car, and a very high percentage of them go away, quit talking to us and don't buy. What are they afraid of? What did we do to scare them off?
They're buying a car though, somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. Maybe not today, but it's like, why aren't they acting? What are they afraid of? So I think this is the part that, in my own experience and working again as a former dealer myself, I think what I see is that the customer is, and this is why this is kind of an important thread for a White Hat Wednesday. The customer that we serve has had their own direct experiences, or they've heard many horror stories, and they're afraid of getting into a transaction where they're either not going to be supported or they're going to be under a lot of pressure, in terms of, and they're not going to have a lot of cooperation from the creditor that they're working with, the lender dealer in this case. And so I think this is something we have to be mindful of. The customer, and it's true in business, it's like the customers want to trust who they're doing business with.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Let me ask you, we talk about how many accounts are charged off, which is typically repo or, total loss or something like that. And I've really enjoyed when we can talk to buy here, pay here dealers, and we've worked with quite a few that have been that customer at one point or another. Having your car repoed is traumatic.
Sure.
It is a trauma. And I know, there's a lot of people out there who's like, let's not talk about what are your traumas. It is traumatic. And it's not something that someone wants to experience again. And so that is a fear. And so, if our customer's fear is that you're going to turn around and repo this car and I'm going to be without a car, then there's a message that you can put out there about, the support that you are there to offer, and, and that repoing is like last resort, and we're going to, or whatever about this, but there's something in there around that too. And so, when you talk about fears, you can look at just what are their fears about their car, and then what are their fears that not having a car create.
Okay.
So there's multiple layers of the fear that doing business with you will help alleviate.
Let's stop and talk about something that's related to this. And it's something I put in the description of the podcast this morning. It's like the idea of the lens that we see the customer through. So when we talk about the fears of repossession or fears of dealing with a customer or dealer that's not trustworthy, I think if I try to look at that through the lens of some of the dealers that we've met or they're members of their team, and you can almost hear the phrasing of, well, make your payment and you won't have a fear of repossession, or there's sort of an attitude that sort of identifies or thinks of the customer base as deadbeats
and irresponsible.
And so they use this expression and they have this view of the customer base that is harsh, and where does that come from? Well, past experience. They spend their day dealing with the delinquent and the past due and the repossessions, and so that forms their opinion, and they start to apply that then to the 70% of the customers who are not a problem. They're not.
They might just be like, oh, I had a little bit of a thing, and so can we make an arrangement so I can get things back on track? But most of your customer base is not out to be irresponsible,
right?
Are not out to get a dealer. I mean, it's that is, I see that. And, I have a really hard time believing that a few bad experiences, or even if it's 30% of your customer base have these problems, that you should treat everyone the way you would treat the 30%.
Right.
And I think that you should treat everyone the way you would treat the customers that aren't a problem. Right. Everyone should get that kind of, and how can we help? How can we support?
And there's nothing we're talking about, and we'll get to collections. Like right now, I didn't put stuff on the screen, but we're kind of mostly staying right now in the market, in the
avatar.
Yeah. So if you think about the market and how do we serve? So again, we're thinking about growing our business.
Yeah.
And so when we're saying, how do we grow our business? One of the conversations I've been having recently with our groups and some of our dealers is, let's remember, especially in the holidays here, that we can grow our customer base 2 ways. We can grow our portfolio, which grows our cash flow 2 ways. We can create more sales, which we have to pay for those cars to do that. Or we can save some repos and keep those customers on the books and get better at conflict resolution and
support.
And saving, right, and support, and start to identify those things and work with folks. So I think when, as you said, when the 30% affects our willingness to cooperate with the 70%, then again, we're kind of getting away from marketing, but it's like we have to think about the lens that we see our customer through, and that's going to affect our marketing. It's going to affect our conversations in the sales department and underwriting.
Yeah. Well, this all kind of comes down to, when we talked about their fears, is that our customers want to pay their bills.
Right.
The end.
Say it again.
The end. Our customers want to pay their bills.
They don't want to worry about a repossession.
They don't want to worry about a repossession. And yes, there are some that they may have this desire and they still screw up because they don't understand how to do it. But our customers want to pay their bills.
So let me stop for just a minute and say there are people listening and say that's not true of some. Well, you can talk about the exception, but for today the conversation needs to be around the rule, because the rule is this is the customer that we serve. This is the customer that we're working to reach. And so when you get so caught up in the wiring, as somebody I used to work with talked about, is like if you're so tangled up in the wiring that you let this affect your lens and your view of the customer that you're really trying to serve and how to really help them to be successful, then that's unfortunate, because it's gonna filter down to all the elements of your business. So this is a difficult business. It's like being able to maintain that perspective. And I think, again, from a White Hat Wednesday standpoint, when I think about marketing in our segment, I really want us to be able to market ourselves in a way that we begin to sell ourselves as trustworthy and overcoming some of these fears, right? We sell ourselves and our business.
Supportive.
Yeah, supportive is good. Yeah. So when we can get out there and, we talk about becoming known, liked, and trusted, really all three of those, right? And so if you got to first be known through your marketing, you got to get yourself out there. You need your customers to like you, but when they trust you, that means they don't fear you. And they accept that you are on the level. And so I think this is where our day-to-day attitude, starting with the dealer principal, that trickles down as to who we do business with, who we don't. The phrases, the words that we choose to use in the building are going to affect our team. And so this is all part of a kind of I'll call it a culture of growth. Okay. So this is kind of this idea that we want to bring this attitude that we're going to serve folks. Are there going to be irresponsible troublemakers that land in our portfolio? Absolutely. But we got to avoid having that negatively affect how we approach and reach the customers that are the typical customer who do really well. And they're the ones that Tommy Grant has called survivors.
Yeah, they want to pay their bills. And that Tommy is like, I have never seen someone who can stretch a dollar bill more than our customer.
Sure.
And it's like, hats off to you, because those that have more financial bandwidth are really wasteful.
Right.
And so we get irritated when our customers are a little bit wasteful, but it's like, let's turn the mirror around and let's, so to give them the grace of, our customers want to pay their bills, but they also want to go get a beer with their friends on a Friday night. Sure. And so, the fierce thing. The next one was, how do they make their buying decisions? And from my experience, most of our customers are in a panic when they need a car.
Yeah.
And so they make their buying decisions. I mean, I don't believe that there's a lot of our customers that do massive amounts of research before they go looking for a car.
Seem so, but I think we better.
I mean, there may, and that I am, because we haven't really surveyed that about about their buying decisions, but
do they look at reviews?
Do
for
they look at
example?
reviews? And we were actually talking about this morning, is adding that to some of our surveys. It's like,
Mhm.
is the review of a company, important to
We
you?
know the surveys
hmm
suggest that in the new car and used car
They
segment,
are.
they do that,
hmm
but in buy here, pay here, that's going to be different.
Yeah, it's a different. Most of the time when someone buys a car that has the financial bandwidth to go to a dealership, or a franchise, or an independent, they are they have the ability to be a little more picky,
Sure.
too. And we yeah. So
So
understand their
this
buying
Forbes
decisions.
article talks about, some customers buy impulsively
hmm
while others are more methodical and they do their research and what have you. So
hmm
we certainly need to understand that about the customer that we serve. I can tell you that in our own experience of working with marketing and
hmm
CRMs and some of the data
hmm
coming out of there, it does suggest that there's a pretty high percentage of the customers who don't buy right away. One of the
hmm
things I learned when I got in the car business, they used to say, true or not, they used to say, when you meet a customer, you can expect that they will have made their purchase within about 72 hours.
hmm
Now, I generally operated on that practice. I certainly coach that when we speak to a customer, phone, in the building,
hmm
whatever, that we want to bring an urgency about, we're prepared to do business right now. Like whatever
hmm
information we have,
hmm
we're prepared to help you in the car
Yeah,
today.
because I remember when I first started, it's like the be back.
Yeah.
It's and I was like, oh, they're gonna be back,
Yeah.
and Jim just would shake
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
head.
We're going to stand out
He's
front.
like, mm-mm,
Yeah. That's smart
no,
alecky sales managers are going
yeah,
to say, why don't you
that's
stand out on the curb and wait for the bus with all the
of all the
B-backs?
be
Wait for the
backs.
B-back
Yeah,
bus.
and so
And
that took me a little while before I realized that it was not.
well, we just don't
It was
operate on
not
that idea. We
necessarily
have the urgency.
what's
And,
going
and
to
of course,
happen.
we want to operate on the idea. If they don't buy today, we've made the kind of impression that when they do get ready to buy, they want to come back and do business
hmm
with us. But
hmm
I just want us to bring the urgency to every interaction, that we're prepared to do what we can do to help and make it and help you into
hmm
a car right now. That's
Yeah.
what you're here for.
Yep.
You're not here looking for a ham sandwich. You're here to buy a car, and I'm ready to try to help do that right
Yeah.
now. And if the
Yeah.
answer has to be no, it has to be no, but
Yeah.
I'm going to try my best to help solve
Yeah.
the problem right now. But I'm just saying, we know that the customer, apparently many of the customers do not make an impulsive decision. It used to always operate on
hmm
the idea that most of our customers who are shopping for a car in the buy here, pay here
hmm
space are shopping from a place of need. Like it's
hmm
almost out of desperation, I think was your word. It's like they need to get into a car right away. Well, why? Well, because their last car broke down, their last car got repossessed, or they've been
hmm
borrowing their
And
aunt's car.
regardless of whether or not they're great at paying their bills, they still need a car.
Yeah, they got to get around. So I
hmm
think a lot of times I expect that there's some urgent need around
hmm
replacing a car
Yeah.
right away. But what the
hmm
data is starting to suggest, there's a pretty high percentage of customers that, if that's the situation, they're finding other ways to work or whatever,
Uh-huh.
because they're not necessarily all buying right away. We're seeing a fair
Yeah.
number of our dealers that are having, at least the ones that are working with a good persistent BDC, they're having many deals closed that are more than 30 days since the first inquiry.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that just
Oh,
means
yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
customers that are in the market for an extended period of time.
And they may be for a different reason in the future. So just
Right.
kind of keeping them in the loop. You know, uh, when you think about it, um, when someone is having a problem with their car, or whatever, like I need a new car, that's usually something that they're going to, like, it's talk while they're at work,
Mhm.
or it's their neighbors, and it's talk with their neighbors. And so to have been really supportive of your customers, that when someone, because it's good, those kind of things come up in conversations
Mhm.
every day. It's like, I need a new car, and I just, for whatever things, is that having a customer be able to say, hey, this is where I went, and they've been really supportive, and
Mhm.
they've worked with me when I've had a hard time or whatever, and it's like, this is really where you should go. That is gold.
Mhm.
And so I think, even though we may not get online and look at the actual uh ratings
Mhm.
that people have given to a business, if you are actively supporting your customer, that your customers will talk about it.
Sure.
Especially when someone says, hey, this, they do that conversely though too.
Yeah.
So
Positive or negative.
if you've really had a negative experience, they're gonna steer people away from your business.
Yeah.
So
And before we move
yeah.
away from marketing, I would say that I forget the exact phrase, but in marketing and education around marketing, that they talk about that buyers tend to purchase, and one of the things we want to be mindful of in our marketing is that there's a time when opportunity aligns with basically the offer. It's sort of like I'm in the market. I'm not making time every day to shop for a car, but I'm in the market. And suddenly an ad comes into my awareness. Oh, there's a car dealer. I need a car. Let me stop and examine that. But you also can recognize it from a marketing standpoint on the known, liked, and trusted. If I'm suddenly in the market for a car, right, for whatever reason, and I remember that there's this dealer in my area that I love their social media posts when they come across it, just like they show respect for their customers, like they're appreciative and they show respect and they have events and they show that they care, right? And so now it's going to resonate with some, right, where they can say, oh, that's somebody when it's time for me to buy a car, and I have the opportunity to choose where I'm going to do business, then I'm going to seek out the people that have been in my awareness, right, at a time I didn't need a car. And so this is kind of part of what I would say.
And I would, part of what we're talking about right here is like, your market, figuring out who your customer is, and that just flows into how you market to them, and your marketing,
right?
And we've the social media is great because we know, like with commercials and television and all of that it takes so many hits before you become an awareness as an option of those things. And so I'm not really squirreling, I'm more possuming, which means it's related. But I love the social media, but people aren't on their social media all the time. And when they have to get a car, a lot of times that's like a conversation that's happening in their home. And I would suggest, and I really want to measure this, but I've talked to different dealers, and if you can layer in a social media campaign so they're seeing that all the time, and do the ability to be able to target neighborhoods with direct mail, like a postcard that isn't about these are all of our features and this is, but something about that story branding. This is, the problem being solved or whatever. And that's going to go, people look at the stuff that comes in their mailbox. They just do. And so it's like even putting on there, put this on your refrigerator because you may not need it right now. And it's like, it's a coupon or something that says for, we'll match a down or whatever. And it's good for, and they'll put it on their refrigerator. And then they're seeing all the social media, and then the conversation comes up, and then guess what it is that they're going to look at? Is that flyer?
I can't say. You say they do open their mail. I can't say what percentage of people open their mail. There are some. But
it's not an open, because when I get the envelopes and stuff, but when I get a postcard, a big postcard, I always look at it.
Okay.
And
you do.
Most people do.
How do you know?
Most people do.
Here's what I can say.
It's from surveys that I've and research that I've done on the internet about, the percentage of people that actually look at their mail versus the percentage of people that open an email.
So here's what I can tell you on that subject. Troy Spring, you remember Troy's works with, is a partner with Tracy Myers on Unfair Advantage Masterminds. And Troy and I had a conversation, which was recorded, and I think we probably brought it to our podcast. But basically he said, because keep in mind, Troy's a guy who works with franchise dealers with big budgets, and they have really comprehensive campaigns, which includes social media and billboards and probably all kinds of stuff. And he said, direct mail absolutely still works. So people have moved away from it. Most of our dealers are putting all their money into Facebook and Google, right? So they can do it, whatever. But I'm saying, Troy says in their big budget campaigns where they have a chance to test and analyze all these different types, direct mail still works. So it's a question, again, on the marketing thing is we need to understand where our customers live. I don't know in today's marketing how specifically you can identify demographics for your mailers.
You can. So I've done the research, and it's just like, we talk about being able to identify for social media. There, it's getting as pinpoint accurate with direct mail as well, because it's coming from surveys, from the censuses.
It
And
makes sense.
So
I
you're
think it would be
seeing,
less reliable in our subprime sector, because our sector in general, this is a very broad statement, but our customer base tends to be a little more transient. So I think, the data would be less reliable in our subprime
But where
sector.
did they move to?
Well, I don't know, but
So,
I'm just saying it can work. I'm just saying that the campaigns through direct mail can work. It's really just a question for me. It's less about whether the mail item reaches their mailbox. To me, it's more about what is the message that we're delivering.
That's
if
it.
we do
Exactly.
get in front of them,
That's it. Exactly.
What is the message?
But I mean, if you know that you're getting those postcards in all of the apartment complexes in this area, all the duplexes in this area, this is where specific income levels live, all of that. Even if they're transient, they're usually moving in and out of apartments, or they are going to be moving around. So if it doesn't have to be it's just current resident.
Sure.
So you're sending that kind of stuff. But
so yeah, we
digress.
We obviously got to be careful about discriminating in our sector, but we're just using demographics, which everybody uses every time you get on Facebook.
I mean, that's not discriminating. That's just like, I'm trying to meet my customer where they're at.
Right.
And so the next one was, who would you like to work with?
Right.
And this is a very loaded question, because we all want to work with someone who's going to pay on time every month. Okay, that's just great. Your that to me is, it really weaves in underwriting as well. And that's where things like, what is their income? What is their history? What, and all of those things. And the big question that I've seen a lot on social media is, they're talking about like the income. And it's like, let's break down the budget of someone that only brings in this much money. And, and so we're looking at, I want to have a shiny car on my lot that makes me proud to drive onto my lot, because it makes me feel, I don't know, whatever. Is your customer able to do that? Or who you're trying to reach and have come in, are they able to comfortably afford what it is you have on your lot?
Okay.
And if not, it's like, run your budgets, people. Dealers just look at the price of what kind of payment, all of that. And, let's make sure that we have vehicles on our lots that, if your customer is from this demographic, that they can do it comfortably. And we're like, well, we can stretch it. We want to be able to get as much as we can, but we also have to understand they have to buy coats for their kids for the winter time. They have to, they've got these things that are not usually part of what we're asking about when we're budgeting through, if we're doing a budget conversation with them. So be aware and look at it without blinders about, if I had this much money, what is rent? And one of the things that I've seen recently is like $1,200. I don't know very many places that cost $1,200 that is a 2-bedroom.
Right.
You might be able to get a 1-bedroom, which is going to be a single person, that whatever, and then that person who's doing that is going to have to make X amount of dollars, and that's usually somewhere around $20 to $25 an hour in order for them to afford a $1,200 a month. So
let me offer a squiggly line side of who I would want to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, I'm a guy who started sitting with customers and taking applications in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
I owned my own dealership from 2005 to 2011. And I did pull credit reports. And if I were a dealer today, I would be pulling credit reports. And the customer that I would be trying to do business with is the customer who's going to be truthful with me.
That honest.
I can overlook lots of past mistakes. I can pass repos. I can overlook a lot of that stuff. But the reason I would pull a credit report is after taking an application, I'm going to ask the customer, anything on the credit report you want to share. And then when they say no, before we move on, it's going to be, what about any past repos, past bankruptcy, anything like that? What we don't want is surprises. So I want to hear from the customer. Are they prepared to be truthful? Because I want to hear from them. This is why I still like an in-person conversation. I want the customer at the building. I want to meet them. I want to sit across from them. I want to read body language. I want to, I want to see eye contact, and I want to know if the customer is being truthful with me. I can overlook a lot of stuff. And I can step into a 3-year business relationship if I've got somebody that I feel like is being truthful. Why? They want to trust us. Well, I want to trust them. If I'm a dealer, I'm going to step into a long relationship, and I'm going to provide you financing. And so I want to trust you. And so how would I get there? Well, I really can't get there with a web app.
And the other thing is like, so if someone is not being truthful about what's happening on their credit report, do you say there's the door the moment that they do? Or is it because most of our customers have been told no, and so they're going to gray areas that they feel like are the things that will keep them from being able to get a car. And it's like, if you can show them that, yes, I'm aware of all of the things and give them the opportunity, it's kind of like you're likely not going to have a customer come in and be 100% truthful from the moment they hit the door. But when you can set a precedent that's like, it's not going to keep you from getting a car. I just want you to be truthful. I just really want to understand your circumstances. And you tell about things like, it looks like you had a thing in Phoenix, Arizona, but you live in Charlotte. And so that was last year. And you said you've lived here for the last 5 years. Talk to me about that. And then, so that they know that it's like, hey, I just need to be open. And
so
honest.
I think, now we're kind of stepping more into sales and underwriting, which I think, we're starting to wrap up here. But I think all of the things that we talked about are really relevant in all of these aspects, because it's what do we know about our customer in order to be able to serve them when they're buying, when we're closing the loan, when we're collecting the payments. Like, we really need to understand the customer that we serve in order to have success there. So I think all the things we talked about, regardless of which segment, that's going to be true. But back to the thing about, I know artificial intelligence is working in our favor. I know that there's, all these data analytics that can help us, and there's all these sophisticated tools, and that's wonderful. I've not heard of any AI that's deployed in the subprime auto space that is reading people's body language or eye contact or any of that stuff. And so I think there's just, we got to, one of the ways that we can feel comfortable, and I think it's really significant. If you're my customer and you're applying, and I get to the place where you tell me the ugliest parts of your credit story, and I'm satisfied that you're telling me the truth, it correlates with your credit report, because there's a story. Like, you might have had a past repo, but almost with every repo, there's a story. What happened? Well, the dealer wouldn't pay for the repairs, so I couldn't afford it, so I walked away. Well, that's one story I need to hear, right? There could be a whole different story. Well, I co-signed for my son, blah, 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 whatever. You need to hear the story. So I think who do I want to do business with? Somebody that I feel like is being on the level with me, who's speaking. And so now we get to the place where I agree to finance you today. You just told me about the ugliest parts of your credit circumstances, which is a big relief to you. We still move forward, and I agree to do business. Now you step into this 3-year business relationship with me, knowing there's really not much we can't talk about.
And
Right?
and I love I don't remember, it was probably someone you'd worked with or whatever, that the end conversation is, if there's ever a problem, come and set yourself down right there and we can work it out.
And it also puts me in a position now because we talk about sales and underwriting, which could also encompass closing. right? The actual we've met with them, we took the application, we've underwritten the deal, and now we're going to close the loan. So if I'm in your or I'm closing loan with you, and maybe I'm the underwriter, and you share with me the credit circumstances, and I say, okay, we're going to move forward here, but here's what I need you to understand about so that if you find yourself in a similar situation around a mechanical problem, which you described as the case, here's what's going to happen with us. You still want to move forward? Like this is how we handle mechanical matters.
Yeah.
So you can avoid being in the situation you were in before by doing this.
There is, flashy stuff, new technology, all that is really fun and it's flashy and it's like, yes.
And it's appropriate for the people doing 100, 200 cars a month.
And it is, but it does not replace that conversation. Right. Yeah. And it does not replace, when we get into the collections part, which is support, it does not replace what you have in your tool belt to support them.
Right.
I mean, what you have, what are the things that what tools are you giving your collectors to be able to help support them? And I know, you can use all of the technology and feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
I personally, and you may have a different, I've yet to see how high technology is actually equating to better loan performance.
Well, let me tie this back to sports because that's what I do. No, I think we're in the middle of the World Series. I don't know if you're a couple games into.
I was not aware. Thank you.
Dodgers and Yankees.
Okay.
So, and I'm not really tracking it, but I know those are the teams. But I here's what I would say about that. Do you remember the movie Moneyball? Do you remember that at all? So I forget who the characters were, or the actors. But the story of Moneyball was this guy who came on the scene in the baseball, and he started using analytics. He started studying. Data. He started digging into data, and it allowed them to get really sophisticated with their defensive positioning and some stuff. And the next thing you know, they're in the World Series for like the first time. So the idea here, though, is when I think about that, and I see this more in football because I don't follow baseball as much, but you have all these sophisticated analytics that tells you where your shortstop ought to be positioned, right? So that's good. But we can't abandon fundamentals. That shortstop is in the World Series largely because they practice taking ground balls every day. They're fielding ground balls and they're working on the fundamentals of the game, of the game. And so this is what I'm saying. We got this cool new technology, which is great, but we cannot abandon the fundamentals.
Amen.
Right. So
amen. And that is, from my perspective, a fundamental of this entire process is humaning.
Yeah.
It's like, it's having the conversations. Sure. It's connecting with your customers. Sure. It's supporting your customers. And no amount of technology can help you with that.
And in football, it's called blocking and tackling. We talk about it's basic blocking and tackling. It's like you can the teams that are in the Super Bowl in football, you watch, they're generally going to be good tackling teams.
Yeah.
They're going to be good blocking and tackling teams. Do they have great coaches who put them in great position because they've done their scouting report and they know where they're supposed to be? Yes. But they have to be able to make the tackle or every play goes for a touchdown, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
the fundamentals.
The fundamentals.
And the fundamentals is what I guess that, when you think about, if we're going to wrap everything up that we've been talking about, the fundamentals are knowing your customer, being a problem solver, helping them learn how to be more truthful, and then supporting them after the sale.
So, so getting to know them is going to help you market and reach the kind of avatar and the typical customer. But when I say get to know them, I don't mean their credit score. I mean get to know them. Get to understand
and
who they are.
That's I'm going to bring Candace Price into this real quick before we leave. That's one of the things that I really love about her approach, is that she talks to them about their problems, and she has an arsenal of tools to help solve problems that are outside of their car.
Yeah.
So when someone says, "Hey, I'm really struggling with being able to afford daycare or whatever," Candace is like, "Oh, let's call this person right here that works for this organization that does the thing, and let me get you hooked up with them, and they can help you with that."
Good.
And so you've solved a problem that they didn't come there to have solved, but you cared enough to help them solve a problem. And,
which increases their chance of success.
Absolutely
with what's
does.
going on, but it also, it kind of gets them married to us. Like they come to
trust you.
us, right?
It's
So
like,
that's
oh,
important.
you're my friend
Yeah.
because you're helping me.
And then one
And,
quick thing I would just throw in here is like, I think I mentioned this before, but we've got a dealer in the Great Lakes who's one of our dealers in the V8 thing that is one of the highest volume dealers consistently. They're consistently up there at the top in terms of their units per month, and they don't take applications online. So I think when we think about fundamentals and we think about all the, I call it kind of the pendulum swing of technology. A lot of us are overusing technology, and what I'm seeing, at least in this one very clear example, is that it's going to make a difference when we can get past the technology and start to, be able to just talk to the customer, get to know them, right? And then you can figure stuff out.
Yeah. Well,
right?
we are in a White Hat Way is not about the sales process and the collection process becoming sterile.
Not at all. Right.
It's about you getting in the ditch with your customer.
Absolutely.
And being able to it's about getting dirty and helping and in ways that you can help.
Table.
And sitting, it's like you're not sitting across the table, you're sitting on the same side of the table and both looking at the thing and and coming jointly up with solutions to the problem. And
but we just got to understand them first. And so
I
think we touched on most everything. Obviously on the collection side, we can see how all of the things that we talked about here would also serve us on the collection side. When we get to know the customer, we communicate with them, we listen to them and understand what's going on with them, then that goes a long way towards solving whatever the problem is.
And I'm one of the reasons why I love the idea. And I don't have data to prove it, but it just freaking feels good, is when you have people on your team that are friendly and relatable and approachable, and not salesy. And it's that you have people that someone can sit down and feel comfortable having a conversation with. It's like, oh, I could probably have a beer with this person or whatever, because they have the interpersonal skills to be able to get to know somebody. But they don't have to look a certain way, and they don't have to it's like having people on your team that our customers would feel comfortable sitting on the same side of the table with as well.
That's good. I think also, whether it's collections or any other department, I think we can save this conversation for another White Hat Wednesday. But I think the idea of empathy versus sympathy and how to be empathetic and still hold the customer accountable.
And that's where I love when we talk to dealers, that it's like, I was in this position and I want to do this because I want to help others. It's just like, oh, so much of the foundation is already laid of the empathy and the caring and problem solvers.
So we got to hire people that want to get to know our customers and know how to solve problems.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Any closing thoughts? We really appreciate you giving your time. We knew we went really long today because we got so much into the whole market research. If you want to learn anything more about some of the things we've talked about, there's an arsenal. We've got like 400 episodes that are sitting in YouTube, and the podcast, our syndicated podcast stations. Go there, and you can search different subjects. Thank you again so much for joining. We'll be back on Friday with just a regular straight line. So we might be weaving more and more squiggly lines into what we talk about, but we really appreciate and know that you have a choice on what you're going to do with your day. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. We appreciate it. Have a great day.